Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because we're going to be looking at something that affects almost all of us, yet it is completely 100% hidden from view. You know, if you own a home in an older Midwestern suburb, you probably think your biggest maintenance headaches are going to be, a leaky roof or maybe peeling exterior paint, but the truth? There is a literal, invisible war raging right beneath your feet and behind your drywall. It's this relentless, daily battle between nature and aging materials. So today, we are bringing that battlefield right out into the light so you can understand exactly what is happening in the dark spaces of your own house.
Is your home sitting on a plumbing time bomb? Okay, it's a super provocative question, I know, but seriously, if you live in a house built a few decades ago, the systems that keep your water flowing and your home sanitary, they are likely under constant, unrelenting attack. We just usually don't see or hear it until the absolute worst moment. You know, when the basement suddenly floods or a ceiling mysteriously gets stained. So our goal today is to basically give you X-ray vision into this highly vulnerable infrastructure so you can defuse that time bomb before it ever goes off and ruins your peace of mind.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp this invisible war, we're going to look at a highly specific, honestly fascinating case study based on some deep data from Keystone Plumbing Cincinnati. We are zeroing in on Forest Park, Ohio, nestled right there in the Mill Creek watershed. Now, why focus here? Well, because it's kind of the ultimate testing ground. It perfectly illustrates this intense clash between mid-century infrastructure and a really demanding local geography. Making this hyper-local makes the data feel real and tangible for us. But make no mistake, the lessons we're uncovering here apply way beyond the city limits to pretty much any mid-century suburb in the region.
50 to 70. That represents the absolute maximum lifespan in years of original galvanized steel pipes. Now let's just do the math on that for a second. Many homes in Forest Park and the surrounding Midwestern suburbs, they were built rapidly during that post-war boom of the 1950s and 60s. That means those original metal pipes aren't just getting, a little old. They are currently reaching their absolute breaking point right now, today. The clock has officially run out, and the materials are quite simply expiring from sheer age.
All right, moving into Section 1, the local plumbing battleground and nature's attack. Because it's not just age destroying these pipes, it's this highly coordinated assault by specific natural villains out there in the environment. So let's meet the enemy. There are three main geographical threats that create a literal perfect storm for localized plumbing failures. You've got expanding clay soil deep in the ground, mineral-heavy hard water flowing continuously inside the pipes, and of course the brutal reality of freezing Ohio winters attacking from the outside in. Honestly, any one of these is incredibly tough on a house. Dealing with all three at once, that's a structural nightmare that just pushes infrastructure right past its limits. Let's break these down one by one.
First, let's talk about the dirt itself. Hamilton County is famous for its heavy, dense clay soil, and this creates a literal underground pressure cooker. During the wet season, this specific type of clay acts like a massive sponge, right? It expands dramatically and physically crushes underground water and sewer connections with thousands of pounds of pressure. Then, during the dry season, the whole process violently reverses. The soil rapidly contracts and shifts, physically pulling those exact same pipes apart. It is this constant, year-round cycle of brutal bending and breaking that rigid, older materials just cannot withstand indefinitely.
And where there are shifting soils and cracked pipes, well, nature inevitably sends its most persistent and patient soldier, the tree root. Root intrusion happens when those gorgeous, massive, mature oaks and maples in your front yard start getting thirsty. I mean, they're secretly running a covert operation against your home. Their root systems can literally sense the tiny amounts of moisture and nutrients escaping from freshly cracked mid-century clay sewer lines. So they forcefully grow their way inside those microscopic fissures, expanding as they drink and creating these massive, immovable blockages that inevitably lead to, you guessed it, raw sewage backing up directly into your home.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't just random bad luck striking a house here and there. It is a geographical certainty. We can actually point to specific ground zeros. Established neighborhoods near Kemper Avenue, Waycross Road, and Heritage Hill face the absolute brunt of this onslaught. These areas combine the oldest infrastructure from the 50s and 60s with the most mature, deep-rooted landscaping. The battle lines are quite literally drawn on the neighborhood map, and the underground environment there is incredibly hostile.
Which brings us to Section 2, Casualties of War, Aging Infrastructure's Breaking Point.
So we know what's attacking from the outside, but what actually happens indoors when those unrelenting geographical attacks finally breach your defenses? Well, the first major casualty is caused by galvanized corrosion. And this is a fascinating and honestly somewhat terrifying process where those 1950s-era metal pipes rust and deteriorate from the inside out,
On the outside, the pipe running along your basement ceiling might look totally solid, but inside, it's quietly choking itself off with thick layers of rust, shrinking the internal diameter down to the size of a straw. If you're experiencing mysterious low water pressure or discolored, rusty water, that's not just a quirk of living in an old house. That is a blaring symptom that a catastrophic, invisible failure is imminent.
Next up, we have hard water scaling. Forest Park draws its municipal water from underground aquifers that are naturally loaded with heavy minerals, specifically calcium and magnesium. Now, it might be perfectly safe to drink, but this high mineral content acts as a slow, calcifying poison for your household fixtures. It leaves that super stubborn white residue around your faucets, creates thick soap scum in the shower, and essentially hardens the arteries of your entire plumbing system by layering dense scale over time.
Which leads us directly to a rather shocking number, 8 to 12. That is the tragically short lifespan, in years, of a standard tank water heater in this specific geographical area. Because of that brutal hard water we just talked about, heavy mineral sediment builds up incredibly fast at the bottom of the tank. It essentially forms a thick layer of literal rock that forces the heater's burner to work overtime just to heat the water. Ultimately, this causes the tank itself to rust out and fail, potentially flooding your basement, long before it would normally break down in a softer water climate.
Let's look at our final casualty and see how this builds into a very specific seasonal emergency, the winter threat. The real ambush here happens in two distinct phases. First, when the temperature drops below 20 degrees, exposed pipes in unheated crawl spaces or exterior walls silently freeze. The water inside expands with tremendous force, splitting the metal or copper right open. But the actual visible destruction, that doesn't happen during the freeze. It waits for the thaw. When the weather finally warms up, the ice plug melts, the pressure suddenly releases through the newly formed crack, and boom, suddenly you have a catastrophic flood pouring straight into your living space.
All right, let's look at some good news in Section 3, the professional defense strategy.
I know it all sounds pretty grim, but seriously, do not despair. It is time to pivot our narrative to the heroes of the story and look at how modern plumbing professionals strike back and restore order against these intense environmental forces. Now, what's really interesting here is the Keystone defense process, which breaks this structured, tactical counterattack into 3 distinct steps. First, they absolutely refuse to just guess or treat surface symptoms. They use advanced fiber optic cameras and hydrostatic pressure tests to physically diagnose the root cause, and they provide clear, upfront pricing. Second, they execute the repair and thoroughly test the new system under high pressure. And third, complete cleanup and follow-up. It is a highly regimented, almost military-style approach to home repair that completely removes the guesswork.
And they are fighting back with a seriously upgraded modern arsenal. Out goes the rust-prone galvanized steel and that brittle clay. In comes highly flexible PEX tubing or high-grade copper for the supply lines, which can actually handle those crazy temperature swings. For the sewers, they use thick, impenetrable PVC or ABS plastics that roots simply cannot pierce. They even employ trenchless sewer repair. Guys, this is a brilliant modern engineering technique that allows them to insert a resin-coated sleeve into a crushed underground pipe, inflating it to cure in place. This fixes the pipe entirely from the inside without ever having to bring a backhoe in and excavate your beautiful landscaping. These advanced materials permanently neutralize the threat of root intrusion and hidden corrosion.
But the defense isn't just about physical materials and pipes. Consider this really powerful mandate regarding the Ohio Building Code. These aren't suggestions. They're safety requirements that protect your family. Strict adherence to code, things like ensuring proper exhaust venting for gas water heaters and securing the necessary municipal permits, that isn't just bureaucratic red tape meant to slow a project down. It is an actual vital safety shield protecting you against silent, invisible killers like carbon monoxide gas, as well as preventing catastrophic structural damage from improper installations.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 4, Protecting Your Home, the Preventive Countermeasure. The professionals have their brilliant strategy, right? But what about you? It's time to look at the actionable, tactical maintenance that you can employ to fortify your own castle right now, before the perfect storm even hits. First, flush your water heater annually to clear out that devastating hard water sediment before it turns into a rock-solid layer. Second, insulate any exposed pipes in your unheated crawl space and attic with foam tubing well before the Ohio winter drops below 20 degrees. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, if your home is over 40 years old, invest in a professional camera inspection of your main sewer line. Because finding a tiny tree root intrusion today costs a mere fraction of what it takes to clean up a raw sewage flood in your finished basement tomorrow.
I really want to leave you with this final vital thought. The dense clay soil is silently shifting. The tree roots are actively growing deeper, searching for a drink. The temperatures are dropping. So, what is happening under your lawn right now? This invisible war is raging whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. But now that you deeply understand the unique geography, you know exactly what materials are failing, and you recognize the modern defense strategies, you are no longer just an innocent bystander waiting for a leak. You actually have the knowledge to take proactive action and successfully protect your home. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and stay vigilant out there.